Hi, everyone. My name is Joy Chen. I'm with the Eaton Fire Survivors Network, and I am so excited to welcome you tonight to a very special gathering to understand insurance fraud. Um, 6 months, we're coming up to 6 months after the fire, and if there's one thing that so many of us have in common, it is dealing with delays and denials and underpayments. And perhaps the number one question that we're seeing across the Discord is this normal? Is the way that my insurance company treating me the way that they're supposed to be treating me? What does insurance bad faith mean? And what is insurance fraud? Well, I am so excited to welcome the nation's two top experts on these very issues. So the way tonight's going to work is Doug Quinn and Dominic Dugo will introduce themselves and give kind of an overview of this of these issues, and specifically how we all can protect our families against insurance fraud. Following that, I will make a very special announcement about how we are taking our campaign to the very next level on our 6 month anniversary of the fire, which is July 7th. At the same time, we'll have our first in-person gathering, which I know that I don't know about you, but I feel sorely the need to be together with my fellow survivors on that important anniversary date. And then following that, we will open it up to questions and comments for all of us, especially for Doug and Dominic, on what you've learned. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties with the chats. It seems the chat's not working. So the way that you can put in your questions and comments is onto the Google form that Raina has just posted into the chat. We welcome your questions as well as your comments. If Doug or Dominic has an aha moment, says something that you have an aha, feel free to post that into the Google Doc. If you have a comment that you would like to make, there's no need to disguise it as a question. We welcome all of your insights, all of your stories on this Google Doc that you'll see there. And with that, let me also just announce that the insurance accountability fight that we have been waging for the last couple of months, we've just reached a major victory, a major milestone, which is that the investigation of State Farm that we have been demanding has just launched. Ricardo Lara, our California Insurance Commissioner, has just announced the start of that investigation. So we're very excited about that. There's still many more fights to come, but we're so excited and we're so thrilled and grateful to every one of you survivors for stepping forward and making that happen. With that, let me welcome Doug and Dominic. Doug?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. We'll give you a brief introduction, then we'll get rolling. I am Doug Quinn. I'm the Executive Director of the American Policyholder Association. We are an organization primarily focused on defending consumers from being defrauded by their insurance companies, as well as the entities, the third parties that they hire to help process with claims. And I am also the Chief Executive Officer of United Survivors Disaster Relief. I've been boots on the ground for 23 different natural disasters, including the LA fires. So I have a pretty in-depth understanding of what's going on there. And certainly we are happy to be here to help educate you on how to defend yourself and how the APA can help. With me is our national prosecution coordinator, Dominic Dugo, and I'll let Dominic tell you about himself.
Well, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here to see if we could help a little bit. My background, I was a deputy district attorney in San Diego for 33 years, 27 years prosecuting insurance fraud. I managed the program for many years, retired in 2019 as a chief deputy, part of the administration. I worked, my unit was very active in San Diego in the 2003 wildfires and the 2007 wildfires. Learned a great deal working with the survivors and the victims. And when I retired, I was supposed to go to Europe. COVID hit. Doug called me and asked if I would help out, and here I am. And we'll see what we can do tonight to give you some of the options available in California. And congratulations, what Joy just announced about your investigation with the Department of Insurance. That's a big deal. Congratulations. That's what victims need to do, work together to get action. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify. Dominic, I knew Dominic of Dominic. I'm on the board for the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud and the Property and Casualty Fraud Task Force. Dominic is a multiple year former co-chair of the coalition, and I had seen Dominic at the meetings in DC. And when I had heard that he was retiring, we aggressively hunted him down. We had one of our members who's an attorney fly down to San Diego, meet with him immediately. We snapped him up as quick as we possibly could. I meet with prosecutors and attorneys general all over the country, and I always ask them the same question. I see you do a lot of fraud prosecution against people cheating insurance companies. Have you ever prosecuted anybody from the carrier side for cheating consumers on claims? And Dominic, to date, is the only one who can ever answer the question yes to that. So he's very valuable and very rare in the space. We're very fortunate
So
to
I
have
just want to make
him.
sure that I understand what you just said. You just said that there is a whole basically industry of prosecuting insurance fraud in this country, and that state prosecutors do this all the time. But all of the prosecutions of insurance fraud is of consumers committing fraud against the industry.
Consumers, contractors,
Okay,
professional criminals. I mean, it's real. People do cheat insurance companies
right.
regularly, but the position is
But
fraud
state
happens on
insurance
all sides.
commissioners generally don't prosecute the insurance companies. I mean, the insurance companies are the ones with so much more power, right? There's a massive power imbalance. So what you're saying is in the country, Dominic, as a longtime prosecutor, is the sole one who's been aggressively prosecuting the industry when it commits fraud. Is that what you're saying?
He's the only one who, in his public service, can answer yes to the question, I did go criminally after an insurance company for committing fraud. And now he is aggressively chasing cases down for the people by the APA. The dynamics are this. It's not that the prosecutors are bad people. There's about 4,000 insurance company SIUs, special investigation units, that are turning in cases of people cheating insurance companies, which again is very real. It happens. It costs all of us money. All fraud is wrong.
Mhm.
And there's only one organization turning in cases of insurance companies committing fraud against consumers, and that's the APA. So a 4,000 to 1 ratio. And by the way, we're a reasonably new organization. We've only been around for 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's obviously going to be unbalanced, but we're doing, everything in our power to address that imbalance. And certainly we will be pushing it forward in the state of California.
And I
Great.
believe even though it's an unfortunate tragedy that everyone's faced, we are in California, and I believe it's probably the best state. We do have prosecutors in Los Angeles District Attorney's Office that historically have been very aggressive in what we call civil prosecutions, going after insurance companies. The American policyholders, slightly different twist, and we're going to cover that during the presentation, where we're talking about actually a potential criminal charges, felony charges, a little bit different. But we'll maybe why don't we go ahead and then we'll get
Yeah, let's get
to that.
started. That sounds really interesting.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. We're assuming everybody can see that.
Yes, I can see that.
And as we said, the first thing I do want to say is congratulations. It is big to have your state open up a market conduct investigation this early. That's what it's called. It's called the market conduct investigation, where they focus on a specific carrier and how they're behaving, how they're treating policyholders, how they're handling claims. And it's because you all worked together and advocated for yourselves. And that's big. And I hope you continue that trend having seen this success. The one point I want to make is there's this concept that, hey, if I don't make, any waves, if I'm, good to the insurance company and I stay quiet, they're going to be nice to me and take good care of me. And I will tell you that it is exactly the opposite.
Mm,
Being quiet, not advocating for yourself, not speaking to the press, not joining together with your neighbors in community actions and joining groups like Joy has here actually just makes you an easier victim. It is, we have seen many people who speak with the press and then wind up getting justice on their claims. And above and beyond that, you don't just want to advocate for yourself, you want to advocate for your neighbors. We want to make sure that everybody is treated fairly. Everybody has the promise honored that was made when the insurance company accepted your premiums, that they're going to pay an honest claim and you're going to get rebuilt, your communities are going to recover, and you'll all be back home again.
mm,
But again, I just want to congratulate you. I think this is a great development and great job, Joy, and everyone else who worked on this.
great.
So moving
Congratulations.
forward, you see this disaster victim?
Mm,
There's a saying that we have at the APA, and it's insurer fraud is the crime that doesn't exist until it happens to you. And when it does happen to you, it's like you're all alone against the power of $1 billion insurance company, and you really feel like you have no voice. And if you look at this person standing on top of what's left of everything they owned, pushed out into the front yard, getting ready to get hauled away, and think about what that's like, because I know a lot of you know what that's like. And the thought process is, hey, this is bad, but this is why I bought insurance and it's going to be okay. It'll be a rough 6 months or so, and then I'll be rebuilt and I'll be back home because I did the right thing. I bought insurance. I paid my premiums, whether, I had the money or not. I made sure I did that because it was the responsible thing. My insurance is going to cover this and I'll be back home. My family will be back home and, everything will be good. And I will tell you the reason why I know so well what this person is thinking is because that's me. That's me in 2012 after Superstorm Sandy washed away my home and everything I owned. And with the maximum legal amount of insurance that I could buy, because I was a financial advisor for 30 years. I believe in insurance, I still do. I bought the maximum legal amount I could. And if you want to take a minute and think how long it actually took me to get home with all of that insurance,
3 years.
7 years. 7 years in which my life was ruined and I was not, I know exactly what you're going through because I lived it. And I honestly, I had days I couldn't get out of bed. And I will tell you that it is a difficult position. I don't believe that many people here will take 7 years, but I do know there are people who will never go home. People will lose the American dream who did the right thing and bought insurance. So what we want to focus on today is making sure that the insurance companies honor the commitment they made to you. But I just want you to understand, I'm here for a reason because I believe in what we're doing. I believe how important it is. And I know exactly where you are because I have lived it in a very dark and grueling road.
And I
Mm,
would like to acknowledge Doug. I've seen him since I've been at the American Policyholder Association. You have these hurricane damages in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, around the country. And within days, he's down there with his wife on the ground, handing out supplies, free of charge, being out there to help the victims because he knows exactly what it means to be one. So that's the honorable thing. So I just want to
thank you
point that
both
out.
for your service, really.
Yeah, the USDR, our nonprofit, is all volunteer, and our motto is survivors helping survivors because it means a lot to hear from another survivor that it's going to be okay. And some of the most important things we do is we give out hugs because we know what you're going through. We've been there. So let's look, where is the problem, right? Why isn't it as simple as, hey, I sent you premiums and now I need a claim. It's time for the money to come the other way. Why am I having a hard time? A lot of that goes back to the early 90s when Allstate Insurance had a soft market, and they hired this firm called McKinsey. I know many of you know who they are. It's a very reputable firm. They've been around since 1935. They're the gold standard in consultants. Um, but what they did with Allstate was particularly challenging. And the books that you see on either side, from Good Hands to Boxing Gloves and Delay, Deny, Defend, written by Jay Feynman, who was actually on the build team when we formed the APA, we'll talk about it. And what they did was they showed the insurance companies, because they did it with Allstate, and then they took the dog and pony show on the road and worked with a lot of other insurance companies. They basically showed them how to use their claims department as a profit center. You know, the model of insurance is we collect your premiums. We don't necessarily need to make money on that. That's called the spread, an underwriting loss or an underwriting gain. But we invest that money, and Warren Buffett will attribute much of his success to using what they call the insurance float. All of that money that they're waiting on paying out, it's not in a shoebox under the CEO's desk. It's actually invested in the market, and they're making 25, 30% returns on that money. So when you see a company complain about an underwriting loss, that means they paid out more in claims than they collected in premiums. That does not mean that company lost money. It's a little trick that they play. So McKinsey sort of showed the insurance companies how to use their claims department as a profit center. One of the things they came up with that was particularly egregious was a concept called leakage. Leakage, as they defined it, is the spread between what I paid you on a claim versus how much I could have underpaid you on a claim before you ran and got a lawyer and sued me. So if I paid you $500,000 on a claim, but I could have got away with only paying you $400,000, that's $100,000 of leakage. And they actually had to go in and train all their employees on how to do this. And people that didn't pick up with it, people who were not willing to go to work and short American families every day on claims, were fired. They got rid of them. So this is where a lot of the problems have started. And the one thing I want you to understand is that the interest of the consumer and the interest of the insurance company are adverse at the time of claim. And it's a zero-sum solution. If they pay you $1, they lose $1. So as much as all the TV commercials tell you you're in good hands and we're a good neighbor, we're on your side, your interests are adverse when you file a claim. And many people will file maybe 1 or 2 claims or 0 claims in their whole life. And are you good at anything when you do it the first or second time? Absolutely not. And so, of course, on the left-hand side of this, you see the policyholders who have almost no experience. And on the right-hand side, you have the insurance carriers who have attorneys, adjusters, engineers, desk adjusters, consultants, all of whom do this for a living, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 20, 30 years, and they all share information together. There is a huge imbalance of experience and a huge imbalance in power, because guess who decides how much you get paid on that claim? The insurance company does. So it's simple as this. Hey, Raina, we owe you money. Let my people figure it out, and we'll send you a check. And it's problematic. And certainly, you know, there's a lot of challenges to fighting this. So understand, most people don't understand their insurance. Most people haven't read the policy. There's a good chance your agent never even read the policy that they sold you. So this is where a lot of the problems come in, and a lot of the reasons why you're having trouble if you are. And I promise you, you are not alone. I lived through it personally, and we saw it all over the country. We continue to see it. You're not alone, and there are ways you can defend yourself. So here's one of the ideas, is that the insurance companies aren't the only people. There are people involved in your claim that you're not even aware of, and their loyalty is not necessarily to you. These are third-party administrators. Typically, the way it happens is you will call your insurance company. You look at the property owner on the left side. They'll call in, and that person will actually answer the phone saying ABC Insurance Company. But they do not necessarily work for that insurance company. They work for a TPA. Even when they come out and inspect your claim, they may have a windbreaker for that insurance company on. They may be using a laptop from that insurance company, but they're working for a third party and they're hiring adjusting firms, engineering firms, building consultants, and their loyalties are to the insurance carrier. And part of their value proposition is we will keep claims down. And that is a big part of the problem too, because we see a lot of the third parties that are engaged are where a lot of the fraud is happening.
Mm.
And look, we talk about money. We talk about underpaid on claims. We talk about, I got 100,000 less, or they denied me, I didn't get this. But I want you to understand it's about more than just money. This was actually a study that I was involved in 4 years after Superstorm Sandy. We got college kids. We went out into the neighborhoods that had been impacted. I was actually one of the neighborhood captains. And here's some of the things that we found 4 years after the disaster. 40% of the people lacked the resources to rebuild. 45% of the children, their school performance was suffering, including 67% of high school seniors either had to reduce, delay, or cancel plans to attend college. You're talking about undercutting a child's education that's going to have an impact forever, and it's going to be a loss of generational wealth and upward mobility. 56% of the people have trouble paying bills. 70% of the people had new physical and mental health issues. And I mean heart attacks, depression, anxiety, increased dependence on drugs and alcohol, marital problems, suicides. After Hurricane Ian in Florida, we saw 6 suicides. There was a gentleman right after Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. His house was destroyed. He sat on his front porch and shot himself. This is what people go through, and the news does not cover this. Nobody, we are sticking with people through the years of this long, slow, dysfunctional recovery, but the press really doesn't. They may check in on anniversaries. That's why I'm glad that you guys are doing an anniversary. Anniversaries are very important. But for the most part, no one's watching what's happening because people are suffering in silos. But understand, you will see some people, and you yourselves may be going through this. You're not alone, and there are resources out there for help. And certainly, this is a conversation that we can have with Joy and the rest of your group at a later date.
Mm. This is really so shocking that all of these are 4 years after the fire. I mean, I think for many of us, we had assumed that maybe this is like a 3-year process, but to see those, 70% are having new physical and emotional issues 4 years later is really shocking.
Yeah, and by the way, for some of you, it may be a 3-year journey, it may be a 2-year journey. Some of you will never get home at all. I can look outside my window and I can see holes where there used to be generational homes, and now there's just empty space. Or
Mm.
real estate, predatory lenders and real estate people may come in and clean up. It's real. We see it in every disaster zone. And the one thing I want you to remember, there is a concept called disaster trauma. It's this dirty
Yeah.
little secret that nobody speaks about, but it is a real thing. If you feel like you're having, and you have to watch each other. If you start to watch people maybe drinking a little too much, maybe dependent on drugs, maybe having PTSD symptoms, which will tend to start showing up 18 to 22 months later, but you'll see some early onset people having volatile issues, temper issues, and it's not their normal behavior. That's
Yeah.
what disaster trauma looks like.
Okay.
So moving forward, this is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. I'm not a huge fan, but I do like this particular definition of insurance fraud. And it basically says insurance fraud occurs when the insurance company, agent, adjuster, or consumer commits a deliberate deception in order to obtain an illegitimate gain. One of the reasons why I like this definition is it's one of the few instances in America where you actually see an admission that people on the carrier side commit fraud too. And I will tell you, there are states where the actual penal code only defines insurance fraud as somebody stealing from the insurance company. The penal code doesn't even acknowledge insurance company entities stealing from from consumers. As a matter of fact, when the APA started 7 years ago, we had to coin the terms insurer fraud and carrier side fraud because there wasn't even a definition for that. We actually had to coin those terms. So look, it's real. Fraud happens on all sides. All fraud is wrong. It all deserves to be held accountable, all fraudsters, and that's what we're pushing for.
In
Mhm.
California, let me jump in before Doug continues. We have a great statute, okay? So our law is great in this arena. We do have statute that covers insurance fraud objectively on both sides. So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Right.
Yeah, California is known as one of the more consumer-friendly states. And we're very happy that our fraud investigators and Dominic are all based in California because they know a lot of people. And we certainly hope that means we're going to be getting justice for survivors.
Okay, this might be a dumb question because I'm not a lawyer, but if we prosecute fraud, then this would not be like at the DOI, right? When we say prosecutor, do we mean the justice system? And this would be a criminal
We're gonna,
issue, right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
going to go through the justice system, and this will be outside of the DOI. Is that correct?
The Department of Insurance is a investigative agency. So they have peace officers, law enforcement officers that investigate, like cops. They're cops.
Okay.
Okay. But they don't prosecute. Prosecute goes to the district attorney's office, attorney general's office, city attorney's office. Primarily in this arena, we're going to be in the district attorney's office. So they're the ones that actually prosecute, but they work with the Department of Insurance. I know the person heading up the criminal investigations on the ground in the Los Angeles area. He came from San Diego during our wildfires in 03 and 07. He's an outstanding investigator. He's leading the effort there. That's great for, I think, great news for the victims. But
Right.
there is a difference.
Okay, super.
So moving forward, who are the common perpetrators of insurer or carrier side fraud? There will be insurance company employees, third-party administrators, engineering firms, and adjusters. And again, these are not common suspects in investigations, but I want you to understand they are there, and sometimes they're just as willing to commit fraud as anybody else. And here's some examples of insurer fraud techniques: deleting legitimate line items off a claim, fraudulent engineer reports, intentionally concealing damage, cut and paste denials, forged signatures, faking facts to minimize a claim, attributing it to something other than what it is, intentionally misrepresenting causation. And these are things that we see, that these are things that are happening out in the field. They are hard to find because, again, these are white collar criminals. These are not thugs throwing bricks through jewelry store windows. These are smart people doing devious things, and they know how to cover their tracks. And by the very nature of the fact that the APA is the only entity that's looking for them, makes it very easy for them to get away with it.
Mm.
And here's an example. This is an actual engineering report. If you look, you'll see the original report done by the engineer on the ground. It says the building was structurally damaged by hydrodynamic forces. Underneath, it says the repair of the building is not economically viable. It is a complete loss. But what was sent to the homeowner, you can see on the right, they just inserted the word not. House was not, building was not structurally damaged. It was the result of long-term differential movement of supporting soil. That's a flood thing. It's called earth movement, and conveniently, it's an exclusion from coverage. If it happens to you, you don't get paid. And it's as simple as that. The engineer on the ground saw this and said, and I've seen this house. Yes, it was severely damaged. It was pushed off its foundation by waves and 4 feet of sand piled up against it. The engineer on the ground said, yes, this is storm damage. And then when it went back to his firm for what's called peer review, somebody there just inserted the word not, and they tried to deny this claim. And listen, if everyone wants, just take a screenshot of this. This is, and then Dominic's gonna take over his portion. This is important. We very often, I have people call me and describe something that sounds very much like fraud. But if there's no evidence, it's not a viable case. And Dominic will tell you it's hard to get a prosecutor to take it, or a prosecutor to take it. It's hard for them to meet their standards that they need to get a prosecution. So these are the types of evidence. If you have a regular PC, just hit the little Windows thing on the lower left of your screen. It looks like a little window, and print screen, which is on the top center of your screen. I believe it coincides with F8, and then you'll get a screenshot of it. Or if you want to do it simply, just pick up your phone and take a picture of this. But this is important evidence. It's important for you to document and preserve evidence, and all of these pieces on here are evidence. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our National Prosecution Coordinator, Dominic Dugo.
Okay, Doug, let's go to the next slide too. All right. Some things that Joy mentioned, and I did want to cover some basic information. Okay, so what you have in the legal system, you have like a regulatory practice. The Department of Insurance, they regulate the insurance companies. They control how they conduct business. All right. And then if the Department of Insurance may say, we don't like the way you're conducting business, they may make them change the way they conduct their business. They may fine them. That's a regulatory action by the Department of Insurance. Then what you have, we'll go to number two, civil lawsuits. This will be a private attorney, or it could be consumer attorneys that are out in the community, which we have many in California. We have some outstanding consumer attorneys over the years. What they'll do is they'll sue the insurance company. They'll say, on behalf of the consumer, you violated the contract, because there's an insurance contract. That insurance company, maybe you violated the contract. You deny that there's coverage. There really is coverage. Now, if it gets bad, because the insurance company is required to just some basic things. They're supposed to act in good faith, handle claims fairly and honest, review the merits of each claim. That's the normal process, right? Okay. Now going to the civil lawsuit, if the insurance company and lawyers, you'll hear there have been lawsuits over the years. I mean, this is a regular business where there are lawsuits against insurance companies, civil lawsuits, where they claim that the insurance company was dishonest, misrepresented facts, they denied the claim without a reasonable basis, so they sue the insurance company. So that's been going on for forever in the United States, okay? And when it gets bad, it gets into bad faith. So a bad action could be a civil bad faith. Now that's for monetary damages, okay? And now the standard of proof, if you ever sat on a jury trial, especially most of the cases will be criminal jury trials, right? You'll hear beyond a reasonable doubt. But in a civil case, it's preponderance of the evidence. What that means in a civil case, if I convince you 51%, you believe 51% in my favor and 49% in Joy's favor, I win. Okay, that's easier
Are
to.
we supposed to move the PowerPoint forward or no?
Not yet. I'm just going to get to.
Yeah.
Now. So those are the civil. Now we get into the criminal prosecution to the district attorney's office, and where we're going to go to the criminal fraud. Now the district attorney's office also, if there's a fraud, they may prosecute the case what they call civil prosecution. Los Angeles district attorneys, outstanding program, and they'll file a prosecution, but it's a civil prosecution under 17200 of the Business Code in California, and they get injunctions and fines against insurance companies. That's been done in the past. Now the area that we're going to focus in on is actual criminal prosecution, and that's where the American policyholder comes into play. Now historically, and I think Joy commented on this, there have been prosecutions of consumers in the past. For example, if you claim you have 5 Oriental rugs worth $50,000 in your house, you really only had one, and you get caught, that's a lie, and you'll be prosecuted. Those kind of cases have been prosecuted. But as Doug pointed out, historically, the insurance company, if there was a fraud conduct like that, has not been prosecuted. It's gone through civil bad faith, civil fraud cases, and that's where the American policyholder is looking into these type of cases. All right, now the American policyholder, we have 4 California Highway Patrol officers retired that are our investigators along with me. So they were 30 plus years. And we kind of look at it as law enforcement, retired, but that's how we approach the case. Now, insurance fraud, this is for California. What I want to point out, and this is where we're going here with the fraud referrals. Okay, insurance fraud, false or fraudulent material statement, that means a lie. Okay, if you have in your case, there's a clear lie, and it's some material means important. An important lie to deny a benefit. That's what insurance fraud is. In California, our statute covers the opposing side, meaning if the insurance company illegally denies the claim based on fraud, we have a statute, and this is a summary of the definition. All right, next slide. So the lie, the false statement could be written, oral. Material just means important. So that, remember, lie about something important to deny your claim. So the focus is going to be the lie. Doug, change. Okay, burden of proof. Now, these are going to be fewer cases. That's why I covered the civil cases earlier, because these cases are going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. The next slide. So when to determine whether there's a criminal case, beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard of proof. That's a higher standard. Now, there's no numerical. Like in preponderance, it's 51%. But beyond a reasonable doubt, we're talking in the 90s. I mean, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt to moral certainty of the truth of the charge. Very high standard of proof. Criminal case. Next. Now what does the APA do? I'd like you to go, if you think that you've been a victim of fraud, as I just defined, go to the American Policyholder webpage, and we have a box there, report fraud. And this will start the process. It's very simple. Some of the things that, go to the next slide, some of the things that we cover in the report fraud, you'll need your name, the claim, the policy. Well, there's a little small box for you to say, what is it that you're alleging is fraud? And then if you have any documents, attach it to the referral. Now, what do we do with it? Next slide. So we have our 4 California Highway Patrol officers, very experienced. They'll review it with me. We'll send you a letter acknowledging that we received your referral. And if we think that there's potential of a fraud case, of a felony crime, we'll work on the investigation. We'll collect your documents. We'll talk with you. We'll put together a package. So the officers who are retired, they'll put together a package like they used to do when they were in law enforcement. Once we put that package together, next slide, what we'll do is, part of the package is we may interview some witnesses, interview you, maybe some other people, collect reports. But keep in mind, since we're not officially law enforcement, we don't have the entire insurance file. We can't do a search warrant. There's a lot of evidence that we do not have. However, we'll package the best way we can in an objective manner, because it's important when you present a case to law enforcement, it's objectively portrayed as to what the facts are truthfully. And then the next slide. And then what we'll do is, with you, we'll refer the case, say, to the district attorney's office, or maybe we'll give it to the Department of Insurance to continue to investigate, or the state bar if it involves an attorney with some practice, things like that. So we'll help you package the case together to present it to law enforcement. In California, you may want to take this down, Penal Code 550, Penal Code 550B lays out pretty much what I explained, and that's a felony crime in California. Now, historically, it was only done against, quite frankly, the consumer. However, fraud can occur, as Doug mentioned, on any side of a transaction. And what we do with the Consumer Protection Unit, we try to be objective and look at the facts and see what's there or what's not there, and then we'll help you submit it to law enforcement.
All right, so I just want to make sure that we all have a clear idea of what is considered fraud here. And, you said the bar is going to be very high because we are looking at criminal fraud. So in other words, this is stuff that people could go to prison for. And, you put some slides up there that said they might have omitted things. They might have been lying. I think that many of us feel that our insurance companies have been lying to us or have been omitting key facts or not looking, for loss, saying, don't talk to me about smoke damage, sort of like see no evil, hear no evil. So I just want to be very precise here before you get, 200 people writing you and saying, is this fraud? I think it'll be good to be more specific about what rises to the level of criminal fraud that you're talking about. Can you distinguish between criminal fraud and general bad faith and just general bad behavior, so that we can, not overwhelm you and not spend a lot of our time maybe packaging things up and send to you that are not even going to clear the bar of what you're looking for here.
Well, it goes back to Doug, maybe we can go back to the insurance fraud slide. So it has to be a lie about something important in the case, which denies the benefit you're entitled to.
Okay.
Now you say, now your question is actually an excellent question. You say, well, what's the difference? Bad faith. It sounds like fraud, right? That's pretty much what you're saying. And it could be. A bad faith case is a very egregious behavior by a party. In this case, we're talking insurance company, very egregious behavior by the insurance company. That could be a felony crime too. It could be both. But every case is different. A lot of times, I have to tell you, what I saw in San Diego in 2003, 2007, was a lot of insurance policies that, including my own, okay, my home. I thought I had this great home insurance policy, and I was underinsured. I mean, when I looked at it, I learned that from going to all the town hall meetings. The policy was not very good.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a fraud case. Okay, so what we're looking at, and it's a simple definition, but it depends on the facts of the case. So we have to, there has to be a false or fraudulent means a lie. So there has to be an intentional. Lie means an intentional, not okay. And there has to be something important that ends up denying your claim or giving you less money.
So for example, we have a couple of cases, a couple of our survivors have brought to me cases where they've seen an original loss estimate and it was accidentally provided to them. And then they saw another loss estimate later, which was slashed, half of what the original loss estimate was. Presumably the original loss estimate was truthful, factual, but then they were presented a second one and they were even told like, oh, you weren't supposed to see that first one. Is that
I would be
fraud
some.
under your, that is certainly, the second one is false. It's certainly made for the purpose of denying, the delta in the loss payout. Would you consider that fraud if they have those two pieces of evidence?
First of all, we're talking fraud a little loosely, okay? So
Okay.
because you need to know all the facts first,
Okay.
right? So we know a portion of the facts. That's why, like in our referrals, we'll submit a referral and say we suspect there may be fraud, but we don't know until we know all the facts. For example, even in the example you gave, and I think I saw the email chain. I think that would be a case if I were that victim, I would refer that to American Policyholder Association. Now, now we don't know why they changed. We don't know why they changed the estimate, right? We don't know the internal makings of the insurance company. Maybe they reviewed the report and thought the person was out to lunch, the first person. We don't know that, right? You don't know what the internal communication was. Therefore, that's why it's easy to say fraud right off the bat. That's why what I have always done when I've spoken to 1,000 victims over the years for insurance fraud, different types of insurance fraud, is if you suspect this, make a referral, and then we'll dig deeper into it. Because almost everybody thinks everything's fraud, and not necessarily fraud. You need to know both sides of the story first and all the facts.
Okay.
However, I think the fact that we're out here in the community, that Doug's out here with the American Policyholder Association, it's good as a deterrent because people know that others are looking. Prevention is a big thing in law enforcement. Remember back in the college days, why was the big bouncer at the front door of the bar? The deterrent of they're probably not going to create trouble if you got this big bouncer there. It's good to have a deterrent effect. Now, historically, we've had a deterrent effect with civil lawsuits, lawyers suing the insurance company. We haven't really had a deterrent effect with potentially law enforcement looking at a criminal prosecution, and that's what the American policyholder is looking at.
Well, that sounds like that's what's so powerful here, right? That if with all these civil cases, the insurance company, they're found liable, so then they just cough up more money, but the actual people who are perpetrating the fraud, the executives, they still keep their $24 million salary, if you're a State Farm CEO. But in this case, what's so powerful here is if there is criminal fraud cases brought, people will go to prison.
Right.
And that
And
would be a
we,
much greater deterrent than having your employer pay out the fine. We
exactly.
have a
And
lot of
we're meeting, we're meeting with the Department of Insurance investigators in a few weeks. American policyholder, our investigators with me. We're meeting with them to discuss this specific topic,
right.
to alert them of that. Quite frankly, in 03 and '07 in San Diego, we we prosecuted price gougers and all these different people out there trying to basically prey on the victims of the wildfires. But we didn't really look at this other aspect, the American policyholder aspect, which is what we're doing now.
We have
And Joel, I'll give you an
a ton
idea
of
when we talk
questions
about,
we have a ton of questions being asked here about lowball estimates, about underinsurance and all this. We actually have a huge YouTube channel where we've had many insurance webinars up until now where we've dealt with many of these issues. And I would really highly recommend that people especially watch the one by Francisco Vega that answers many of these questions about specifically how to handle. He was a longtime adjuster for 20 years, and he's now COO of a restoration company. And he answered many of these questions that are being asked right now. Tonight's event is really about what is the what is fraud, what is bad faith, and so the questions about how to handle various different claims are, I think you might find those answers in some of the previous webinars that we've done in our on our YouTube channel, and that we will continue to do. Insurance is a very, very complex issue, and we're not going to be able to answer all of these questions tonight. We have Raina here, who is our new head of community, and she's going through and identifying some questions that we might answer tonight, specifically on these issues, about these legal issues. One is about, is it normal to have an insurance company vendor share internal conversations that I'm having with their employees inside my home? Is this collusion? Can you talk about the collusion between vendor and insurer? Are there recommendations along these lines of criminal versus bad faith? Are there recommendations for how to push the insurer when you would suspect things like the insurer is dragging their feet or only providing verbal promises? We're seeing I saw a question, somebody said that their adjuster says they're not allowed to have their conversations recorded. When you suspect the insurer is dragging their feet, or they'll only provide verbal or they're changing adjusters, or threatening to retain a lawyer. What can we do to defend ourselves against all these practices that you're mentioning here?
Well, some of that, I'm sure that you've been provided. The Department of Insurance has a hotline number that you can file a complaint against an insurance company behavior.
Yeah,
Typically, that would be the first place to start because they may be able to take immediate action against the insurance company. Another thing is what you all did, Joy, by getting I believe, what was it, 400 complaints together?
yeah,
Okay, a lot of your comments and questions, they're by themselves, they may not be a fraud case, but you say it kind of stinks, right? It kind of
yeah,
smells, all right?
yeah.
But one maybe is not enough. Maybe two is not enough. But now if I got 10 or 15, 20, I mean, for example, in San Diego, this is in the workers' comp arena, we went after some doctors, chiros, and doctors and chiropractors. Uh, we had probably 40, 50 referrals over the years on them.
Hmm.
That kind of alerted law enforcement to where to go. And
Right.
then we finally broke the case. Same
Yeah.
thing with what you're doing here. I think you need to join up together, notify the Department of Insurance with the complaints, and see if there's a pattern. Some of those will be pattern conduct.
Yeah. When we, I mean, the fact is that there's so much, as you pointed out at the very beginning, Doug and Dominic, there's a massive imbalance of power and information between the insurance company and multi-billion-dollar company that does this all the time and any one of us. And the only way that we can start to rectify that imbalance of power is by educating ourselves and by coming together, as we've been doing. I do want to point out to everybody, we've actually created, if you click on this link, this is our brand new website. And if you scroll down here, there's a few things that we're doing to band together. In addition to the 400 plus firsthand accounts that we have collected of delays and denials and this kind of abuse, which prompted the State Farm investigation, there are a few other actions that we can take. One is, if these things are happening to you, the American Policyholder Association, and we will send out tomorrow night the link that you can provide documents to them. There's a few other things. If you scroll down the website to the what you can do now, there's the New York Times Insurance Survey. So the New York Times had closely reviewed the 400 plus accounts that we'd collected, and they'd gone through them and said, you know, there's really something here. And so the New York Times has launched a landmark insurance survey just of Eaton and Palisades survivors, asking you, it's a 5-minute survey asking you what's going on with your insurance and which insurance company do you have. This is incredibly powerful because this will provide for the first time ever real documentation on which insurance companies are honoring their contracts and which are not. So I urge everybody to complete this. This insurance survey is still open. I think the first major story may come out in the next few days, but they will continue to see the survey open from what I hear from them. So fill that out, spend 5 minutes doing that, pass it on to 3 survivors. The other thing is Consumer Watchdog is also collecting these complaints. And I think that, you know, we have different organizations out there, APA specifically looking for that high bar of criminal fraud. If you're going to get all this documentation together, why not also file it with Consumer Watchdog, who's looking at more broadly at bad faith, and you know they're looking at thresholds that are lower than criminal fraud. So get all this information together, put it out
Joy,
there.
I,
Yep.
you're, you, I think you're making a critically important point, okay? You put together paperwork once, and then what I would be doing and what I recommend, okay, it goes circulate to multiple, not American Policyholder, Consumer Watchdog, District Attorney's Office. From everything I know, you have a new district attorney, seems outstanding. I know a lot of people there. Their consumer frauds have a long history of being outstanding. I would send them the referral to
Great.
Attorney General and Department of Insurance. Just make sure everybody's CC'd so they know where it goes. But that's the approach.
Yes. Great. Fantastic. I mean, so don't just take this lying down, right? It's not just you and the insurance company. Arm yourself, because when there is criminal fraud happening, it's important that it be taken care of for yourself, and for all survivors. It's because we've been speaking out that we're starting to get, you know, that we won the investigation and we're starting finally to get some accountability, but it's just the start. I also want to point out before we finish at 8, and we can maybe stay on for a few more minutes, if you look on this page under what you can do now, please look on the left side, join the 6-month press conference and postcard party. So I'm so happy to announce that on Monday, July 7th, which is the 6-month anniversary of our fires, the Eaton and Palisades fire, we are hosting a press conference to announce to the world what's going on with us. You know, we saw this data about 4 months after the fire. There's some new data coming out. 75% of us are still not in our homes. The 75% of displaced survivors are still not back in our homes. Insurance is a huge part of this. So we'll be holding a press conference to just shine a light on what's actually happening with Eaton and Palisades survivors. So Eaton and Palisade survivors are all welcome to come. This will be in Altadena. We'll be having a postcard party that morning. But most importantly, this will be our time to get together and hug each other. I don't know about all of you, but I personally feel like I really need to be with survivors and on this really important milestone date. So I really hope that you come. Hugs will be free. And just it'll be our time to just get together and bond and connect. It's 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at a great venue in Altadena. So please, right now, if you're interested in coming, you can just click on that Survivor RSVP. You can just write in your name, your email address, and give us your t-shirt size. So make sure you take care of that. Anything else? I'd love to just get to some of these other questions as well. What questions do you guys specifically have? You know, there's a lot of questions about like, my insurance company won't do lead testing. There's a lot of questions. We're having a lot of trouble with this fire of insurance companies kind of being like, see no evil, hear no evil, as far as the contaminant damage in our homes. I don't know if that's something that you guys, I mean, we've been addressing that in many of our previous webinars. We will address that in our further webinars. Do you have any specific thoughts on, you know, how we can deal with the insurance companies and defend ourselves specifically against these, you know, these types of fraudulent behaviors? I think you've said document everything. Are there any other specific things that we can do right now?
If you look on your screen right now,
Yeah.
take a screenshot of this. We have a whole piece of consumer self-defense.
Great.
And also, if you go to the APA website, it's apassociation.org. If you go under tools and resources, we have some free literature consumer guides. One is
Okay.
how to self-advocate in an insurance dispute, which has whole tips of pressure points and negotiation tactics. And the other is how to defend yourself against insurer fraud after a natural disaster. And it's just all of our experience of those of us who have lived through it and how we were able to prevail. We've shared it in these free documents.
Okay, great. So I will get links to all of those if you don't mind, Doug, and then I can share them out tomorrow in our email to everybody.
Enjoy your question there. I mean, that's something that I would be calling the hotline number for the Department of Insurance. They regulate the insurance company. Basically, what you're saying is that this is conduct that they should be doing, right? They should be performing this, and they're not. They're the agency that regulates them. That would be my first stop.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Someone's asking for unanswered questions. Can we answer them by a written response and have attendees circulate? There have been a bunch of questions. We will go through these and we will summarize them for Doug and Dominic. And I think the questions that are within their area, if it's all right, we'll just ask for a few of those answers.
Yeah, I'll give you a final thought on what you said, the power of prosecution. We
Yeah.
got started in Superstorm Sandy. 2,000 of us had filed civil suits, and the insurance companies could care less. But we got one criminal arrest, and from that one criminal arrest, we got 144,000 claims reopened and $380 million paid out to people who had been cheated. And as Dominic said, it is a very powerful deterrent, but it is also a method for economic injustice in an insurance
Can
case.
you tell us more about that? You said that there was one criminal arrest out
Mhm.
of the work that you're out of this work that you did in that particular disaster. So somebody went to jail from the insurance company?
What
But you
wound up happening was we do a
jail.
lot of work with the attorney generals. The attorney general has the ability to do great white collar crime. There are certain units like Dominic's unit that also have that ability, which is great. And what Dominic says in LA, we got the attorney general to raid an engineering firm, seize all of their files. They caught cases like I showed you where they were altering reports behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
then back 3 weeks later and walked one of their managers out in handcuffs. And there was a lot of denial before that. No, nothing's happening. Everything we're doing is right. We're not shorting people on claims. But as soon as they have somebody in handcuffs and saying, yes, we caught it, everybody capitulated. Everybody rolled over. I mean, it was basically just a case where we said, all right, we see it. It's proof. It's real. And again, I was one of the 2,000 people sued. I'd never sued anybody in my life. I wasn't raised that way. But the carriers could care less because there were 144,000 claims. So what if 2,000 people sue? They're going to win some of those suits and everything else they get away with.
Hmm.
The problem with some of the civil prosecution of bad faith, et cetera, is look, if you steal $100 and I come in and fine you $1, it's really not a deterrent. But when somebody sits in a cubicle and says, hey, if I forge this report and I cheat an American family out of their most valuable asset, their home, I could get walked out of here in handcuffs. That's a deterrent. Nobody's going to put their freedom on the line for the insurance company profits.
Yeah. Somebody asked who in the LADA office, because you're saying if you package up all this information, all this evidence of potential fraud, and we give it to the New York Times, we give it to Consumer Watchdog, we give it to American Policyholder, and you had said, hey, we can bring it to the LADA, and you said, Dominic, that we have a fantastic DA. So who specifically should we send it to
I
there?
think if you go online, you'll see they'll have a fraud division in the
Okay.
Los Angeles DA's office. I'm sure there's a way to submit something there. I mean, I work with various people, but that's where I would go. I'd go there, and I know that they're looking for cases. They've been looking for cases for price gouging, different things, and
Wow.
that's another warning I like to make. What I learned in '03 and '07 in San Diego. Uh, there are a lot of great people that come out, like Joy, Doug, to help people, but there's also a lot of, not a lot, but there's some bad people that come out too to take advantage of you. Therefore, I'd be very cautious anytime you do any transaction, any finance, because there's some bad people out there trying to take advantage of you. So I'd be like, nuclear energy, what do they say? Trust but verify. Get rid of
Yeah.
the trust, just verify, okay? Verify before you do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Um, Raina, are there like one or two final questions that we should get to? We're sort of beyond time, but maybe if there's one final question that Doug, and while you look for that, let me also say that, as Raina pointed out in the chats, many of your questions about like how do we do a total, how do we, inventory, all these things. Many of these questions are not just answered in our previous webinars, on future webinars about insurance, but also in our Discord. Everyone here is welcome in our Discord. Here's our website again. If you just go to the top and click on join the Discord, join the network, we have 2,300 survivors in there answering one another's questions. We have a lot of experts on how to use AI to very quickly scan a room. You can look at old family photos and start to develop your total loss lists, and not just putting in general prompts, but very specific prompts. And those prompts are also within our Discord. So please feel free. It's completely free to use that as a resource. There are 50 moderated channels and just a lot of answers there as well. Um,
There's not a single question. There's just a lot
okay.
of different types of questions. I think,
Yeah.
many of them that are being asked are similar to the ones that we've seen in Discord. And they're not necessarily directly tied to fraud. So I think we
Yeah.
are good for the evening. And
Okay.
I hope that we'll find, for folks who are looking for some of these answers, that you'll join us in Discord. And if you can't find
Yeah.
answers, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
Great. Well, fantastic. Well, with that, I do want to thank Doug and Dominic. Doug is on East Coast time, and the two of you guys are doing such tremendous work helping disaster survivors throughout the country. I mean, the work that you're doing is so pioneering. Doug has been featured in 60 Minutes documentary on insurance fraud that really changed public policy in Florida. Dominic, multi-decade career prosecuting fraud in these areas. I mean, the two of you guys, the tremendous work that you're doing in public service, we're grateful to you, and we're grateful to you for joining us tonight. It will be fantastic if, we're seeing a lot of these behaviors about like the lying, the omissions, and all this. And of course, it's all to lower the payouts to us. And so if if we are able to provide evidence that you were able to use to secure a criminal prosecution in California, that would be incredible. I mean, we need accountability, as you said, for when consumers commit fraud against companies, but we also need accountability when companies commit fraud against consumers. And so, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for the very important work that you do. Thank you so much for coming to be with us tonight. And to all of you, we very much hope to see you on July 7th to give you all a big hug and to connect in person for what I know will be a very, very powerful morning. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Dominic. Thanks, Raina. And most importantly, thanks to every single one of you. Good night.
Good night.